Hi, I'm Wilf Nichols, and this is Homegrown, your Newfoundland and Labrador gardening show. We've got a great show this week. Guest Steve Davis of the Flower Studio gives us an insight into the art of flower arranging. His basic principle seems to be get to know all the rules and then break them by letting his creative instincts take over and having fun with the whole process. As Newfoundland becomes more urbanized, there are other ways of growing plants that become more prominent. Container gardening is one method and a great way to enjoy pleasures of growing plants in a smaller space. Dr. Peggy Dixon is back, and she'll tell us about some ways of controlling that ever-present pest, the earwig. Debbie Preston and Tim Murray will continue their discussion on organic gardening, and this week Debbie will advise Tim on how to organically control a wide variety of garden pests. So it looks like another great show, so why don't you stay tuned and we'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back. I'm here in the Flower Studio with owner Steve Davis. This is beautiful in here, Steve.
Thank you, Will.
Wow, I looked around, there's so many wonderful flowers here. It seems like there's more variation and opportunity to put floral arrangements using all sorts of plants in here.
Yes, absolutely. The variety that's available to us is just incredible. We get flowers in weekly from some of the best growers right around the world.
Wow. And looking at all the variation, I suppose one thing that comes to mind is, well, what does make a good cut flower? I mean, I've got a lily here, I've got a gladiolus here. What do you look for in a cut flower?
Well, of course, stem length is a very important attribute. You want the flower stem to be long enough to accommodate the arrangement.
And you can't get much longer than a gladiolus. I mean, look at that. That's
yeah,
huge.
The glads are always a nice length, usually about 3 feet, so it gives you lots of room to work with if you need to cut them shorter.
And they don't flop over, they stand up for themselves.
That's right, very strong, sturdy stems, and also the flowers are quite reliable. The flowers tend not to wilt too quickly.
Right.
And the other beautiful thing about glads is all of the florets eventually open as they progress up the stem. Excellent.
And flowers, of course, in a flower arrangement, but that's not all. You've got some foliage in here, and boy, what a nice lot of foliage it is too.
Yeah, well, I've started a framework here with various types of foliage. We have some wonderful magnolia with these beautiful pubescent undersides.
Yes, and that's got to be from the southern states?
Yes, that's right. This particular magnolia is from North Carolina.
Right.
Florida's another producer, though.
I see a bit of BC here.
Mm-hmm. We have some BC cedar as well as some BC salal or lemon leaf.
That's great. And this variegated plant here, what's that one?
Yeah, that's a very widely used green by florists. That's a variegated pittosporum, and that either came from New Zealand or Australia. I'm not quite sure.
You've got stuff from South America, North America, Australia. It's amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
So you've started off with a beautiful green base, and then I suppose you start adding floral, like this one.
Yeah, that's a very nice one. This one was started the same way as the one that I'm working on now.
I have to say, I picked up the vase and it's warm, so you use warm water.
We do. We use warm water initially to dissolve the floral preservative that we use.
Right.
Very important to use preservative, especially if you're using flowers that have maturing buds. The preservative acts as a food source because of a sugar in the crystal. There's also a water acidifier, so it makes the water more acidic. The stems are better able to draw up water.
So when you get one of these in a bunch of flowers, it's good to use the whole thing?
Absolutely. According to the directions, you shouldn't just dump in the whole pack regardless of the size vase. carefully read the directions and mix it with an appropriate volume of water.
Great. So we've got that wonderful foliage base with all sorts of things. We've got, well, I can see some plants that you would even grow in your own garden. There's a goldenrod here, phloxes, so there's no reason why we can't use our own garden plants in a floral arrangement.
No, not at all. There's some wonderful garden plants that are so commonly grown here that make wonderful arrangements, even the beech leaves.
Yes, the beech leaves are wonderful. But another thing I want to show is this one, because while this is full of flowers, this one is got a few flowers in, but mostly it's foliage, and you've even got a pear in there.
Yeah, there's some wonderful red pears that we used in there to pick up on the red colors of the roses and the beech leaves and the hypericum berry. Any type of fruit, pod, rose hips, different types of grasses and reeds serve as a wonderful contrast to the softer look of the petals in an arrangement.
Wow. So are there hard and fast rules when you're making a flower arrangement? Are there rules you have to stick by?
No.
No?
No.
Good.
I think if you adhere to too many rules, you limit the possibilities. It's better to start each one with an open mind and see where it takes you.
So do what you like.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Do what you like, and as long as you enjoy the process and wind up with something that's unique and aesthetically pleasing to somebody, I think you've done a good job.
And if it's in your own home, then it's got to be pleasing to yourself.
That's right. No holds barred.
No holds barred. That's great. Oh, this is so nice. I'm so impressed with. I'm looking at this one. This is a poppy.
Yeah, that's a poppy pod.
Yeah.
I've never quite seen them this large in any gardens around here, but
I think that would be illegal.
Yeah.
Anyway. This has been such a delight to see this, and thank you for showing us around the flower studio. And boy, good luck with all this. This is looking fabulous.
Thank you, Wolf. It's been my pleasure.
We'll be right back. Welcome back. Hanging baskets, aren't they beautiful? You know, one of the most popular parts of gardening nowadays is container gardening because people are living in smaller areas. Maybe they've only got a patio or they're living in a condominium and they've only got a balcony. And so people planting containers is becoming extremely popular. Hanging baskets is one. Window boxes is another very popular container. And really, if you're going to be putting plants into containers, think about sizes. The larger the size, the better. Maybe the largest size you can get to really would be this half barrel. Now that one is actually quite a weighty idea, but the thing about a half barrel is you can plant all sorts of plants in it and it won't dry out too quickly. What do we got in here? We got a fuchsia, not quite in bloom yet. We've got lobelia. We've got this beautiful blue and white nemesia. What a nice variegated form of pelargonium or pot geranium here. Ursinia, not yet in bloom, so something to look forward to. So we've got a whole mass of different plants in here, and we've got different seasons within this one container. Nice window box here. Again, a mixture of plants. We've got lobelia and pelargoniums or geraniums already in bloom, and oh, this one, one of those scented geraniums, gorgeous. But the nasturtiums and the Livingstone daisies have yet to bloom. Now, I tend to think in terms of mixing up plants in my containers, but other people like the same ones. They might have a whole hanging basket full of lobelia, or a whole hanging basket full of petunias or impatiens. And really, again, it's your garden, it's your color scheme, you do whatever you like. But if I can give you one piece of advice about containers, try and keep them as large as possible, because this is a limited space and you've got a lot of production from a small container and you've got a lot of evaporation, and so they can dry out really quickly. Many hanging baskets are available about this size, and if they're way up there in the wind, hanging around, being blown by the wind and being baked by the sun, you might have to water this a couple of times a day. So make sure that if you're going to have small containers, you're available to keep them well watered, or get the neighbor in to water them on a weekend. But a large container like this can go for an entire weekend. This might be difficult for some people to carry, but actually this one is plastic. It's actually very easy. But the terracotta one would be extremely heavy, and watch out for terracotta ones. They might crack in the winter time. Okay, little container like this, a beautiful container, but this would be a nice one to put bulbs in. And we'll talk about forcing bulbs in another show, but this can do really well. So here we are, container gardening, having lots of plants in a small space. Well, if we want them to look as beautiful as this and grow as rapidly as this, we better think in terms of care. If you want them to keep blooming, then you've got to start thinking about deadheading, taking off all the old flowers, and also you've got to have good, well-drained soil with good nutrition. And that means things like 20-20-20, or triple 20 as it's often called. My preference would be to do half strength triple 20 twice as often. That allows the plants to feed regularly instead of having a starvation period and then a lot of food all at one go. And so, just like you and I, we eat constantly and we keep our strength up. So, massive different plants, well-drained soil. Use a nice potting soil that you might get from some of the garden centers. Feed them often and go as big as you can, and you can have really nice containers on the side of your house or on your patio or anywhere you like. And we'll be right back. This week, Peggy Dixon is fielding a question from one of our viewers about that terrible pest, the earwig.
I have earwigs in my garden. Are they good or bad?
Well, Godfrey, I have to say that earwigs are the insect that everyone loves to hate. And it's a little bit of an undeserved rap, really. They don't sting people, they don't bite, they don't spread disease, but still a lot of people don't like them. From a gardener's point of view, I suppose they have good points and bad points. The good points first, they will eat pests, they eat other insects, slugs, that sort of thing in your garden, so that's good. But I think the good points are sort of outweighed by the bad points in that they're also plant feeders. They're omnivores, they will eat both. The earwigs will feed on the leaves and they'll feed on the petals, and the kind of damage they do, their feeding causes shredding of the petals and the leaves. And even if they don't kill the plants, it's very unsightly looking, so not a good thing in your flower garden. So I'd have to conclude overall that earwigs, I suppose, are a bad thing for a gardener. So if they're a bad thing, the next question is, what do we do about them? So one thing that's important to know is that earwigs need moisture. They're very soft-bodied, and they're active at night. And during the day, they need hiding places that are dark and moist and damp. And if you can minimize those types of places in your garden, you'll help with the earwig population to a certain extent. That's old debris, piles of leaves, old wood, and so on left around. That's sort of the places that they like to hide. There are also some things that you can do to trap them to try and reduce the numbers. For example, you can use rolled up newspapers that are that's dampened a little bit. You can use short lengths of garden hose tied together. And in those cases, what you need to do is the earwigs will be hiding in there during the day, and you still have to go and shake them out into a bucket of soapy water or something like that. You can also use traps like little dishes or tubs filled with soy sauce, vegetable oil mixture, or fish oil, something smelly like that. They're attracted to the soy sauce or the fish oil, and then they'll drown, and that will kill a lot of them. But the main thing to remember to minimize earwigs in your garden is to try and get rid of the damp areas.
Tim has some more questions about organic gardening, and this week Debbie will show him some other ways of controlling insects organically.
Hi, we're back at the vegetable garden with Tim Murray, just checking in to see how things are with you this week.
Things are well. The garden's doing all right for late August, actually early September.
Yeah.
So I guess still talking about the bug problems that we've been having.
Right, you're having some more problems now.
Yeah.
As the crop develops.
The later cabbages and things like that are really developing problems.
Oh, okay. Well, I brought along a few products that we can talk about. You mentioned before that you like to use organic products in the garden?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it's a bit safer, as I've heard.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we can have a look at some of the things that we've brought along. Talking about the cabbages that you're having problems with, I think we mentioned before that you could use insecticidal soap to control them now. They're pretty well developed as grubs on the plants, so picking them off, if you can go through and pluck them away, spraying down the leaves with the insecticidal soap. It's a broad spectrum product, so it will kill your beneficial insects as well as your harmful pests.
Sure.
The way it works is it actually has to coat the insect. The insect breathes through its skin or its membrane, and if you coat it with soap, it can't breathe, so that's how it works. Obviously, if the rain washes it off, it's not going to work that well. If it doesn't coat the insect, if you just spray the leaf and you don't get the insects that are underneath the leaf, it's not going to work that well. So you have to keep that in mind when you use it.
Sure.
Again, it's just fatty acids, and don't use it like the week before you harvest, just as a precaution. Okay. There's some other products that you can use for some other problems that develop in the garden. Sticky strips are just like yellow cards that you can hang or you can put on sticks throughout the garden. They'll attract flying insects, the flying moths, and of course they'll stick to them. Obviously you want to be careful using that outside, so again it will attract anything that's bright, that likes bright colors, and a lot of things that you don't want to get stuck to it will. Certainly you wouldn't want to catch any little birds or anything like that, so you want to be careful about where you use it. It's a great product to use in the greenhouse on your tomatoes or your peppers, things like that. I know a big problem that you were having here was slugs and snails. And there's a couple of different products you can use for slugs and snails that are actually organic and natural. I think we talked about this one before. Have you tried this one yet?
Yeah, I've seen it around. I haven't really got into using it though.
It's a granular slug and snail bait. You can sprinkle it around the edge of your garden, not right on the plants. It's ready to use, easy to apply, and it won't harm your pets or your birds or anything like that. Controls the slugs. Or you can use these little pits that you actually fill with sugar water or beer and sink those in around the perimeter of the garden, and that'll trap them. These you'll have to empty every now and then though.
Okay.
There's also insecticidal or horticultural oil that you can use to control some, especially on fruit trees, things like scale, mealybug, those kind of insects that develop on apple trees. Horticultural oil is a good product to use there. Again, a broad spectrum, so you want to get your timing right, so that you don't control or damage any of the beneficial insects that are around. We've also got the sticky tanglefoot paste, sort of on the same principle as the sticky strips. Okay. You put the paste right onto a band and tie that onto trees that insects are crawling up or things like that. Another easy product to use in the garden. And there's all kinds of home remedies and things that you can try as well. And I've brought along a few reference books that you can reference and look up. Great resources for looking up for earwig control around your house or
Sure.
things like that. There's all kinds of little remedies there. Common Sense Pest Control is one, and the Organic Gardener's Handbook of Natural Insect and Disease Control. And there's also one there that the government puts out
Okay.
that give you some tips and things on how to control insects. And that's all we have for this week. Join us next week in the vegetable patch, and we'll check in with Tim and see how his garden is doing. Thank you.
Before we go, here's a little tip. You really enjoy the flowers out in the garden right the way through the summer, but as fall comes along and the frost starts, you might want to bring some of them indoors. But beware, this impatiens is beautiful in the garden. This geranium is so beautiful too. This is one called Wantrina. But if you bring a plant into the home after it's been out all summer long, there's a very good chance you're going to import some bugs or some diseases. And the one to really look out for are aphids. I've got a coleus here, and right the way across this leaf are little aphids, and they are feeling no pain. They're enjoying indoors, they're enjoying that 20 degrees that we tend to keep our indoors at, and they are breeding like crazy. And it wouldn't take long for this entire plant to be covered in aphids, and the next thing you know, all your house plants and everything else is covered in aphids. So, what to do about it? Well, one thing you can do is a little bit of preventive maintenance when you bring a plant in, and that could be as simple as taking a little bucket of soapy water. Here's a beautiful Plectranthus with that wonderful, beautiful, look at that purple leaf. Well, you might want to keep this over the winter time. So first thing you do, dunk it into some soapy water. Just hold it, the plant won't mind. Just leave it down there for a few seconds, take it out, and then shake it off. And a lot of those eggs and any aphids that are already on there are going to die. So clean up your plants before you bring them into the house, and then you should be pretty aphid free right the way through the winter. There's a little tip. Next week we'll be dropping by a couple of gardeners in Rocky Harbour. And Marceau and Michael Brzezinski will give us a tour of their wonderful garden. It's such a fun place with interesting little innovations. It has beautiful flowers to look at, but plants in the landscape that you can actually eat. I'll take you out to Pinsbrook, where the Provincial Department of Agri-Foods has an ongoing experimental project that explores the cultivation of a wide variety of partridge berries and cranberries. Peggy Dixon gets to talk about one of her favourite insects, and that's the ladybug. This insect seems to get high marks for being a help in the garden. Debbie Preston and Tim Murray are going to talk about companion planting, and this is a topic that's a real must for those interested in an organic approach to gardening. Well, before we go, I'd like to thank some of the people that helped us put this show together. Certainly Landscape Newfoundland and Labrador, our non-profit trade association, were instrumental in getting Homegrown going. And so was the Agricultural Policy Framework. So thanks to them, thanks to you for watching, and we'll see you next week.